5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're live with Neve.
All right. Here we are live with Neve. We are talking to you. It is a beautiful day here on the East Coast. I'm looking out. The sun will be down in about a half an hour. It is the perfect time of day. The light is clear. The air is clear. The temperature is crisp. And we're going to have a good afternoon show. Today, our musical guest is the wonderful and talented Lou Castro from Los Angeles. And we're going to be talking all things bass. We're going to be talking all things Los Angeles and sessions and cool rock and roll stories. And so glad Toby's here. Toby is one of our great friends. And as a result, that's how I ran into Lou. She turned me on to him. And he seems like a great guy. So I'm going to have Julie talking bass. When we first go on, I'm going to be just talking about drummer and bass relationships with both of them. And then they're going to get into the more esoteric meat and potatoes for you bass players out there who are watching. I'm glad they're here. Julie, come on in and let's see what's going on in Tampa.
Hello.
Hey.
It is a little dark here. Yeah, sorry. I probably should have turned on a light or something. Can everyone see me?
That's okay.
But, yeah, no, it's, yes.
We're having a bass-friendly day. That's always good. Bass is always a good thing in the morning.
I'm always happy to have good bass, every day.
Good, yes, it's healthy and gluten-free.
It is. In fact, let me show you a Christmas gift that I was generously given to by my guitarist and his wife, who is also an artist.
Wow.
That is Mr. Johnny and Marie Chouinard, Mr. and Mrs. Johnny and Marie Chouinard. Thank you very much for this beautiful. Yes, they gifted me this. I got it last week, and let me tell you, between playing this beautiful Black Beauty over the Dean Behemoth I have, this is
well, that's
much
sweet.
Better.
So you've been loving on it?
I have. I actually wanted to sleep with it the other night. Seriously, I considered it, but I was like, oh, I might hurt the truss rod or something. Don't want to do that.
God can't have that. You can't have somebody. You don't want to be hurting things in bed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conditions we don't want to get into. So I'm excited. We're going to talk bass with our friend from LA, and hell, let's just drag him on here. Cut the bollocks.
Mr. Lou Castro, hello.
Hey, what's happening? How's everybody doing?
I love that.
We're great.
So cool. How are you?
I'm telling you.
It's great to be here as always, and happy Friday to all of you guys back there and to your listeners.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. Well. I'm always excited being a drummer. I love having bass players on. Great thing with the show is our afternoon show. We actually we have a longer format where we just get to talk music, and it's a little different than our frenetic morning craziness. But don't worry, we'll get as crazy as you want to if that's your style.
Mongo just pawning game of life.
All right. You and I first talked last week. I had somehow existential dread came to mind. I guess it's the LA thing. How is LA to you these days? This
morning it was cold and foggy.
Ooh.
For the first part of the week, it was pretty hot, But now we're at Friday, and all of a sudden it's changed. Of course, we've heard things in the news about how this might be the first time in 30 Doesn't get snow.
What?
You're getting snow?
Wow.
No.
No kidding.
Are you serious?
Right. Yeah, I'm serious.
Oh my.
You know, and then the other headline was that in Hawaii they're having gale force winds and there's snow warnings
In
Oh
Hawaii.
my God.
So
That better not come down here. I'll lose it.
well, I think Florida's a completely different thing. It's almost a tropical climate, is it not?
It is.
Yes.
It is tropical, but
It's tropical and sub up in the Panhandle.
Yeah, a couple of 2 days ago, it was 45 degrees and 46 degrees, and then suddenly Wednesday went up to like 80. From 46 degrees in the morning
Right.
to 80 at about noon. It was the craziest
Right.
thing.
Every time I played Florida, like I played a few pop festivals there, but it was so humid that the amps would give up the ghost about 20 or 30 minutes in to the set. So then you'd have to go. So then you'd have to go to the backup, and then of course that would operate for a little bit. Then that would die too. So then you were in the PA. Fun stuff.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
Before we get into the drummer thing, how did you get started? Tell me about your musical upbringing.
I started singing when I was 4 years old. So I sang in choirs, you know, sitting around the campfire or whatever. No, basically, I sang in school choirs and stuff like that. And my mom had a great record collection, so I'd sing along to her records. And I got recruited into a rock band when I was like 14 or 15 years old.
Nice.
And I was a singer and I played tambourine. So my thigh would be bruised at the end of the night from beating my leg with the tambourine. But anyway, what happened was they fired me because I didn't play an instrument per se. So they hired a guy who played bass and sang. And he was very good, Jim Garrity. He was a really good bass player and a good singer. And I thought, well, hell, if he can do it, why can't I?
Absolutely.
So I basically went out and stole my brother's bass that he made. And the only reason why I was able to do that is because he was out riding motorcycles.
Hey.
So, right. So he was into motocross and stuff like that. So I learned how to play on his bass. And I didn't know for like the first, 10 years I played, I didn't know what I was doing. But because I sang, I knew about voice leading and the triads and all that stuff. So I was able to get through that initial learning period and start working. Now, when I moved to LA, that was a completely different thing because everybody that I met seemed to know how to read or could at least navigate their way through a chart. Okay. I got thrown on some sessions where the songwriters would bring their song and we would sit there and do head arrangements right there on the spot. So in essence, I got thrown in with a really great bunch of guys. Jack Bruno was one of the guys I got thrown in with. Dennis Herring, the guy that produced The Future So Bright I Gotta Wear Shades. Kevin Dukes was another one. These guys had, they'd gone to Dick Grove or whatever, but they knew how to make sausage. Okay, so I watched those guys and learned how to operate in that sort of atmosphere. The other thing was I collected records. I collected records and I listened to records. So instinctually, I knew what I thought was a good song, and I knew I could differentiate between a good arrangement and a bad arrangement, how things were put together. And so when I actually moved to LA, one of the first things that happened to me was a friend of mine had a studio and he goes, "Why don't you be the in-house producer?" And I'm just like, okay, do I know what to do? But because I'd listened to records and I had a certain aptitude for the process, even though not really knowing, I knew what to do. I knew what to do. And so you learn by doing. And one of the first people I met while I was doing it was my writing partner, Michael Totten, and we have a thing together called Gringell Snarf. So, and what we do is we write and record and arrange everything and mix everything in house. So it was a valuable lesson. I'm still learning. I'll be the first guy to tell you, at this stage of the game, I don't know anything.
I know exactly what you mean. It's like just those, you know, you suddenly, like for me, as we were talking before we went on the air, I'm entering into a new project that's completely new, and I have to relearn everything all over again so I do it correctly the first time.
Right. You always have to be in touch with that, the curiosity factor and wanting to know more. You can never get too comfortable.
No, because it's always, everything's evolving, so you must as well. And as far as creativity goes, we always want to, you know, create something bigger and better than the last thing we created.
Right. And that also means reading a lot, listening a lot, probably listening more than anything.
Yes.
And just being aware of the world at large. And that a lot of that comes through traveling and stuff like that too. That's one thing about being a musician. You get to travel and experience all these different cultures and different people, different lifestyles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that informs what we do as well.
Absolutely, because now you have all of that experience and new. You find new ways to do things, and even new genres or something that clicks in your head to find that the missing note, as it were, right? The missing note.
Yeah.
Yes,
that missing note or that missing rhythm.
Yes, exactly. And
yeah.
So
Yeah. You were going to say something, Neil.
I was going to ask you who, like you were talking about the contextual differences, like someone like Chris Squire, for example, his playing, he's one of my favorite along with John Entwistle from that era. They definitely had an influence on metal. I thought it was interesting you pointing that out just from the bass playing perspective, because I always kind of felt it listening to some of the Yes. It was just rhythmically, it was such a great mix. I mean, they've always had amazing drummers in my humble opinion. And you know, learning that stuff as a kid to me was like just the greatest school lesson you could look for, you know.
And Chris was influenced by Entwistle. Okay, Entwistle was the guy that created Roto Sound Strings. But I think what differentiated Chris, and talking about Chris and Bill Bruford, where they sat in the pocket, they sat way back in the pocket as opposed to way up in the pocket. They almost played like an R&B band. And that's the same thing with John Paul Jones and John Bonham.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know, it's amazing to think about how much sound Led Zeppelin would throw up with just 3 instruments, you know. And of course, you know, he'd play, you know, not Entwistle, sorry. John Paul would play keyboards occasionally, but that I saw them. It changed my life as a young person. The first time I saw Led Zeppelin, it was around 75. So it just kind of just knocked me over along with everybody else. But I'd been listening because older friends in school, their brothers and sisters had better albums than I did. Although I did start a huge record collection, which is my daughter's.
You had guys like Jack Bruce and John Paul Jones who were multi-instrumentalists. And they played, bass was their mode of expression, but they all started out playing piano.
Yeah, that's weird.
And you can certainly hear that influence in their playing compared to a lot of guys.
Me too. I mean, that's where I started. Playing my favorite theme songs.
By the way, we're at hour, so we're going to just take a quick break. We're on Live with Neve, and we're sitting here talking to Lou Castro. We're talking bass, Bassomatic. We're talking it all. You're here on Live with Neve. We'll be right back. See you on the half.
I'm Keith.
I'm Judy, and our company is Gone Country, and we design and produce our own really unique and fun cowboy hats. Keith and I have tried to create a business that's different by focusing on what's important to the customers. Our quality is so good that we offer a lifetime warranty on everything we sell. At the end of the day, if our customers are happy, we're happy. Check us out at GoneCountryHats.com.
Take a look at the sponsored artists and Gone Country hats at GoneCountryHats.com to find your favorite artist's hat, like Duke Johnson, Sam Rourke, Neil, Jules, and more.
Hey there, it's Kevin Sorbo here, and you lucky people, you are live. You're live with Nev or Neve or Nevi. I don't know. I can't say the dude's name. Anyway, you're on live with him, so I don't know. I guess that's a pretty good thing.
And we're back. Hey, Lou. Thank
Yes.
you. Lou Castro was our guest today. Thank you so much
Thank
for being
you.
here.
Thanks for having me.
So, hey, it's great. And so we were right before the break. We were talking about Led Zeppelin and John Paul Jones and what he did. And so what is the next progression from there? Where do we go from there as far as bass and how it developed and as an instrument for rock and metal and all that and multiple genres?
Okay, so
Big
that's
question.
funny
Sorry.
that you asked that question. So I think since the dawn of the millennium, you've seen guys where bass is the main focus. And actually, it really became prevalent in the 2000s, but there were guys before that like Eberhard Weber who would do, or Dave Holland, where it would be a whole record of nothing but bass or bass solos, or in the case of Eberhard Weber, he would use loopers. Okay, he would use loopers, and he would loop these different sections together, and then play over the top of them, and it was like a bass orchestra.
Now that's
And then
cool.
coming around the millennium, you had guys like Square Pusher. Now you see guys like Thundercat, where the main focus is the bass and his voice. So he's playing bass lines, and then he'll turn around and he's the lead instrument.
Look at that. Jimmy Page was right.
Pardon?
I said Jimmy Page was right when he said you just got to find your own way and your own style of playing and own it and develop it instead of trying to imitate somebody else. That's a perfect example.
Right. That's one part of it, and I think the other part of it is compositionally speaking, it's still about the song.
Yes.
Okay.
It is. The lyrics.
You know, Sting would be just another bass player, except that he writes really good songs. Okay, Paul McCartney would be just another bass player, except that he writes really good songs. In fact, he's the godfather. You know, he's the guy that showed, hey, you know, I've got it all. I can sing, I can play bass, and I can write killer songs.
What else do you need? That's a trifecta, baby.
Right, and so when we talk about influences or how we got started, I neglected to mention for a lot of us it was the Beatles.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney showed us how, you know, the Beatles in general showed what could be done when you put your mind to what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Who and Zeppelin, all those guys. Every kind of, I think there's before the Beatles and there's after, kind of.
I think you're right, because they seem to be they came in at a time where I think music, of course, and I apologize, I don't want to misspeak here. That was before my time, but from what I've learned and experienced, it always seemed like the Beatles kind of helped with that transition to bring in new genres and help create new genres and offshoots from what there was beforehand, right? And then we have
you heard them. You heard them dipping into different musical styles and everything. Yes. And the thing that tied it all together was their voice and the way they approached it instrumentally.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And the production. George Martin, the fifth Beatle. That's the other part of it. They had a great team. Sound wise, compositionally speaking, and the way they put their records together.
And that's what you need. And a lot of people have tried to replicate that. Back to even like again in the late '90s, we had. Oasis. You remember Oasis? They only had one album because they were like the next Beatles, and they just all imploded and started fighting, and that was the end of it. One brilliant album and nothing else. It's a crime to me.
Well, they were kind of like the Kinks, two brothers fighting each other on stage.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. You made my point exactly.
But I mean, I like Oasis. They've written some great songs. There's no question about that.
Yeah. And
great band.
Yeah, they are. And so, in your opinion, with all your travels and your experiences, I guess maybe what event, what gig, or what tour, or where? What gave you the most inspiration, or changed something for you as a bassist that gave you something a little bit more, so you had another edge over everybody else?
Well, number one, it's not a competition.
Very good.
Okay.
I'm so glad you said that.
It's not a competition. That being said, you have to listen to everybody, even the guys that aren't so great. Jimi Hendrix used to say he got his best ideas from bad guitar players.
Did he?
So you listen to everything, and you filter it through your own consciousness. I was never satisfied. When I started out, I was never satisfied being just a bass player. I wanted to write songs.
Absolutely.
Again, it's the McCartney influence or the Pete Townsend influence. They were all great writers. Zeppelin. I think Zeppelin's thing was, I don't know if they were always the greatest songwriters, but they were great arrangers, so they could take a piece of material that maybe wasn't the best in terms of a song, but they would make some of the parts greater than the whole by the arrangement. That happens a lot too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, it does. And being able to find the right lyrics, the right music, the right mood to fit together. Because if the mood doesn't match, if they all have to fit. If the mood and the lyrics don't match, and then the melody, and you're all over the place, it's almost like, I don't know. It's not as conducive to speaking your language and reaching your audience, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. When you are able to do that, yeah.
And earlier we were talking about metal and metal bass players, and one guy I wanted to mention was Jimmy Bain.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy Bain was a keyboard player.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. He was a keyboard player, but you would see him on Kate Bush records.
Oh,
okay. And you'd see him on a Dio record, but he also co-wrote some of those Phil Lynott solo records. And Phil Lynott is another one. Great bass player, great songwriter. Huh. Yeah. Great songwriter. He played more guitar though, I think. But Jimmy Bain was a keyboard player, and I think he even toured with Phil as a keyboard player.
That is great.
Oh yeah.
See, now I love.
What was that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt. I was just.
Oh, no.
I love. What we're talking about right now. The subject is a subject that myself and my guitarist talk about often. He brings it up a lot as well. Talking about, it's about what you can create together. It's not about the competition, like you pointed out. It's about being part of a whole and being able to create something unique, because you've accepted everybody who's come into your family, into your band, into your project. you're accepting them for who they are, everything and what they have to offer, versus, oh, this guy can play, eruption 16 different ways or whatever, and add his own thing to it. Oh yeah, we got to have him. No, versus somebody who's put a lot of thought and effort into the grand scheme of things, into the bigger picture of what you want to do. It's not just the playing, it's not just the writing, it's the stage performance, it's all of that areas where it fits in. And I think as basis, we also we help meld things together. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but we help bring things to me. I always kind of feel like a fulcrum, or just something that we're trying to keep things balanced and level and focused on moving forward and creating new stuff and bringing everyone's energy together. Do you feel anything along those lines, or how does your
we're taking this
work?
we're taking this intangible thing and making it tangible.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we're the guy that ties the melody and the rhythm together. And if the guitar player wants to play in the bass register, okay, well, all right, I'll play high.
There you go.
I'll play high. You want to play high, I'll play low. You've just got to be really malleable and just try to do the unexpected, make it interesting for yourself and for the listener. Obviously,
yes.
I think you've got to satisfy yourself first, and then hopefully the audience will go along with you.
And that's the whole thing, is being able, for me, I envision it when I being on stage with my bandmates, is being able to gather, reach out, and pull their energy towards me, and then we're all connected, and we use that energy and push it out towards our audience, and so they can get a bigger, more elaborate experience than trying to outplay the guitarist because he had too much to drink or whatever is going on. You know what I mean? And it really needs to work together as this. To me, I always think of like it's just it has to be everybody is part of the machine, and the machine has to operate functionally and work in a way that it's going to keep moving forward and not locking up gears because of one thing or another.
I think too, the other thing is, and it's even more prevalent now, not only are we musicians and multimedia artists, but we're entertainers.
Absolutely.
Okay, so a lot of people go, oh, I don't want to be some clown on stage, but I mean, that's part of it too.
It is.
That's part of it too. Some guys are entertaining by not being entertainers.
Good point.
Okay.
Good point.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. You just got to find your own lane and work it.
And work it. You're right.
Work it.
And I love that. We have another break. Can we hold you over? Do you have a few more minutes?
Sure. I got some time.
Okay.
It's
awesome.
Friday, baby.
Okay, Lou Castro is on with us, and on Live with Me, we'll be right back very shortly here, as soon as I can find the spot I want to put on.
Hey everybody, this is Steve from Reach for the Sky, along with Jay from Reach for the Sky. And you're listening live with me.
Neil, you're muted there, my friend.
Oh, thank you for that. I was sitting here
No
running
problem.
at the mouth. I appreciate that. Hey, everybody. Here we are. We're on Live with Neve. It is 1/2 and we've been listening to Lou and Julie talk about bass. And I just have, I'm going to let you guys carry on where you were at, but I have a couple of questions just briefly. Tell me, we've talked about some of the combinations like Chris Squire and his drummer, I'm sorry, Mr.
Bill
Bruford.
Bruford.
Who are your favorite bass drummer combinations from, say, that whole period of the 70s? Obviously, it's a hard question because as a bass player, you've mentioned so many great people, but I'm just curious.
James Jamerson and Benny Benjamin.
And tell everybody
okay, so James Jamerson and Benny Benjamin are the rhythm section on a majority of the Motown hits recorded between 1959 and 1974. There were other guys. But they're definitely the main one. The rhythm section for Gamble and Huff. I mentioned the Yes rhythm section, Squire and Bill Bruford. Bill Bruford and John Wetton and King Crimson.
Yes, absolutely.
Obviously, McCartney and Ringo Starr. Aston and Carlton Barrett. I like the rhythm section in Soundgarden. I like the rhythm section in Rage Against the Machine. Most bands, when we talk about bands, they might have a guitar player that's just average, but most bands that you hear now, the rhythm sections are really happening. They're on the ball.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They're on the ball. They always have a good rhythm section. I think the rhythm section in U2 is really good. Oh,
absolutely.
What's really funny is they didn't really know how to play when they started. Okay,
right.
I think Tina Weymouth and Chris France. Yeah, I think they're really cool.
Very cool. Definitely.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them. I mean, I can remember when I heard the Guess Who. Okay, with Jimmy Cale and I forget the drummer's name, but I thought they were. I think the drummer's name is Jim Peterson or something. But they had a great rhythm section.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think like Grand Chicago. Danny Serafin was always just.
Yeah, and Peter Cetera.
I buy that, sit on with a record player, put 3 or so records on, and then just play all afternoon. You know, my family would be out doing their stuff, or like you, I started also playing in top 40 bands. I heard you and Julie talking about it earlier. And that's always such a great training ground back in the 70s and 80s that's kind of gone now, unless you live in a major, center for music, of course. It's different, but
it's a different. It is a different thing now because I think for the most part that the top 40 thing has morphed into tribute bands.
Yes,
that's what I see. So you're only dealing with one style,
right?
There are still cover bands, but I don't think it compares to all the tribute bands I see.
Well, yeah, back in the day, that was the music. Like when the top 40 thing was big, there's about 20 years. Florida was like a golden age between the 70s and the 90s. Say, there was gigs everywhere. You could do 6 nights a week and work everywhere. That whole Southern Chitlin circuit was out there. It's just vastly different. I mean, of course, I'm preaching to the choir. There's a lot of DJs. There's a lot of reasons. Drug driving laws. All of these things have had an effect on the music scene. Of course, our COVID thing, but that's what you make out of it, because lots of people I know have been incredibly creative during this time period, and
in some respects, it was a godsend.
Well, it's just sometimes things happen, and it works out for the best or the worst. It just depends on what side of the problem or the whatever we have to face in today's world.
I think we mentioned this to you and I when we had our conversation, that it was a chance for people to take a moment and codify what means the most to them in what they do. Okay, for you or I, it's about playing and creating, and obviously the playing with other musicians as well too. Even if you're not in the same room with them, you can do it remotely.
Yes, and that is a great thing. In fact, that's something that helped. Yeah, hey, our show wouldn't have been here if things happened the way they did. And I like hanging out and talking to my musician friends, and just in general, any creative process fascinates me.
The law of unintended consequences.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to whistle past the graveyard here. It's just kind of has to happen that way. It was like after 9/11, we were all just kind of walking around in a daze for a couple of years. And, this thing is still, where it goes, nobody knows. But hell with that. Enough of the bollocks about all that existential dread. I don't know why after I met you, that all of a sudden popped into my vernacular. I'm afraid you're here knocking on the door of the apocalypse,
That's going to be your new band, Existential Dread.
Yeah.
It could be it could be a reggae band.
Yeah, man.
Existential Dread. There you go.
Yeah, I love it, man. White essential dreads. I don't know. I think it would be cultural appropriation if I did the dread thing. I always wonder when I see some white cat running around his dreadlocks. But I remember when I was 17, it's something I would have done. Didn't quite do that, but had plenty of crazy hairstyles that made my parents and some relatives concerned. But what the hell? That's the youth. Do you have any, we've got a little time. Do you have any young bass players coming up that you enjoy or recommend that people haven't heard? Like, I'm liking Speranza. What's her name?
Esperanza Spalding.
Yes. Great.
Esperanza is ridiculously great.
Yes, she's definitely smoking.
I have two bass players that I mentored. One of them is S.D. Heim from the band Heim.
Okay.
And she's famous for the bass face. Another one is Justin Casey Smolian from the band Dirty Honey. So
tell us a little bit about
him. S.D. Heim, a friend of mine was mentoring her, and for some reason he stopped doing it. So he put me in touch with her. And so she was like 12 or 13 years old at the time. So I spent about three or 4 years hanging out with her and playing her different kinds of music and showing her how to navigate the bass. Now I've got to say that she was pretty damn talented when I found her. So it was great though. And her and her sisters were all amazing, empowered young women, intelligent. Their dad and mom were both musicians. Their dad was a drummer. Their mom played guitar and sang. So they're really happening right now in the indie rock world. In fact, if you've heard about the movie Licorice Pizza, that's the youngest of the Heim sisters has the lead role in that movie.
Very nice. Very nice.
Okay. In the case of Justin Casey Smolian, that's an interesting one. He was going through a horrible time in his life. His mom was battling a debilitating disease.
Oh, boy.
So she, through a friend, I got hooked up with him. And so what's really interesting is he plays left-handed.
Oh, wow.
And he's a great bass player, a great musician. He took classical guitar in school. He can read fly matter on paper. But he's also an excellent bass player. This last Black Crowes tour that came through Florida, Dirty Honey was the opening act. Okay. And basically, they had the #1 rock song on Billboard, and they're not signed.
Wow.
And they're in fact they're going to do a co-headlining tour with Wolfgang Van Halen. So
Can
you're
you
going to
tell
have
me again for our listeners? Can you repeat their name?
they're called Dirty Honey.
Dirty Honey. You gotta like it.
Oh, they're
All right,
great. They're a great band, and they're you can tell that they're influenced by old school rock and roll, Zeppelin, Aerosmith, all that. They've got a great singer, great guitar player, great drummer. They've got the whole package, and it's old school stuff. And what's really funny is they kind of came together in the same way that you and I came together, in the sense that they played a lot of clubs,
right,
cover gigs. And that's how they came together. They were doing the same kind of infrastructure.
Our generation, we all relate so much to that, like just getting together and doing a gig. Like, I mean, my life for decades was putting bands together, sometimes really quick. Sometimes on the way. Sometimes I was in my.
Sometimes on the way to the
gig. Yeah, they'd call me and be like, "Hey, can you make it tonight?" And I'd go, "Yeah." And I'd be like, it's Friday, it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'd make a couple of phone calls. I'd have a bass player and a guitar player. I'd call him back, and I might be in the car. This is a true story. I said, yeah, we got a band. We'll be there, 10 o'clock. We'll see you there. And he goes, what's the name of the band? Well, I happened to look out the window, and there was signs. This was in Florida. And the sign scrawled on an old ramshackle, termite-ridden piece of plywood said, Pigs After 5, with a phone number. And so the guy's on the phone, he owned a Chinese restaurant. I couldn't understand him very well. And he goes, what's Joe? He did a Chinese voice and asked me what the name of the band was. And I said, it's Pigs After 5. And all I could say is he went, what? And I said, Pigs After 5. Then it got really quiet. And then finally I said, hello? And he said, Pigs After 5? And I said, yes, sir, that's it. And we got to the gig that night, we got paid, and ended up with a kind of a regular gig.
So now, relating to that experience, when you start doing your own material, it morphs into a whole different thing, because sometimes things happen there. So that's when the whole idea of being able to write out charts, or being able to lead somebody through an arrangement that they've never seen, comes into play, because we see guys do that all the time. I've seen Kenny Aronoff go and sight read a show that he's never seen the music before, but he sits there and he plays through it, and he does it flawlessly. And I've seen so many guys do that. So because they can read, and you need to. I think you need to be comfortable with the idea that you've got to know how to do that on some certain level to be able to get through this thing that we call music.
Absolutely. It certainly would have made it easy. I know, had I learned younger, a lot of things that I learned, like thinking of signature parts, like 50 ways to leave your lover.
All right.
If you're learning that, I'm not a great reader by any means, but when I really want to play that, like I would sit and read it out, just so that I really kind of gives you those little clues that you might miss. Because I'm a pretty quick study, I can listen to a tune a few times, and I know if I just sit in the pocket, I can get it done. You got a bunch of friends from down under. Graham's here. Are you familiar with Graham from Australia, who's in the audience right now?
I don't know Graham, but what's his whole name?
Graham Stevenson, and he is the best. He's an excellent guitar player, singer.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
He runs a musical, he kind of helps young people learn about music. So he's all a really cool guy, and he's down there in the dreadful heat of Australia, although I guess it's getting cold now, so
where's he at in Australia? Is he in Sydney or Adelaide or something like that?
The other coast, East Coast, Perth.
Yeah. Okay, I play with a guitar player from Perth by the name of John Husenstam, who's a wonderful guitar player. He moved to Perth because Perth has really good waves.
Oh, I gotcha. We see here Toby's saying that you're playing at Ireland's 32 on December 22nd.
I am.
All right.
In fact, the drummer in our band is from Australia.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, his name is Chris Grant, and he's a wonderful musician and a total stand-up guy. And then
Toby chimed in that she introduced me to Graham. Toby's like the high dollar Heidi Fleiss band madam of all time. She is a rock star for helping great bands coming up. Graham, it's good to see you watching the show, man. Listen, we only have a few more minutes, so if you could, will you hang over and maybe play a couple more tunes, and then we're done in like 10 minutes.
Sure, I'll be happy to.
Well, great. We're having a great time, everybody. You're watching Lou Castro, and we're going to have, he is playing at Ireland's 32 in Los Angeles. Lou, where in town is that?
That's in beautiful, scenic Sherman Oaks.
All right. Well, there you have it, man. Everybody head out to Sherman Oaks, and who knows, you might bump into Michael Jackson's old doctor roaming around the club. You never know.
No, but you'll definitely run into people that have played with Michael there. There's no question about that. Sure.
All right, man. Well, listen, we're going to be right back. Julie, if you can run us out for a minute, and we'll be right back. You're on Live with me.
Hi, I'm Darren F. Flynn, a singer-songwriter from Ireland, and I'm on Live with Neve.
I would have said it couldn't happen here. The people we...
Hi, this is Leland Sklar, and I am hanging with Neve, and I am having the best time of my life.
Live with Neve, Fridays on the East Coast from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m.
All right. Here we are. We're talking bass. Who better to have than Leland pop in?
Oh, yeah, that's great.
He's just great, and you're great too. I'm enjoying our conversation a lot. Before I have you play, Julie, come on back on here for a moment. Before we have this fun individual play some more and talk some more music, got some questions you'd like to ask?
Yes, one that we touched on briefly, I think, before we went on the air. So, pick or no pick? Where do you land?
I think you need to know how to play with one.
Very good. Now, did you start with one, or did you start with finger strumming and then grow into the pick because you had to?
Okay, so I started playing with the pick because I saw Rick Danko and Barry Oakley playing with the pick, and Chris Squire. Now, what's really funny is Chris Squire picked up and Danko picked down, and McCartney. But I started out playing with my fingers. But in the spirit of experimentation, I would throw a pick into the mix. And then there was a long time when I got away from it, and I was in a band with Vivian Campbell from Def Leppard, and the drummer was Glenn Sobel, who played with Alice Cooper. Well, we were doing some Thin Lizzy tunes. They sound funny if you play with your fingers. It just doesn't have the right feel. The pick is very percussive and very, it's got this forward momentum to it that you're not going to really get with your fingers. Now, we talked about Entwistle earlier.
Yes.
Entwistle mostly played with his fingers, but when he was in the studio, he would play with a pick.
Really?
Because the producers would ask him to do that. Because it had more, as he put it, more point.
Right.
I think probably later on, he probably brought the fingers more into the thing because that's probably what he was comfortable with. I don't know. But it's the same thing with John Paul Jones, too. He played mostly with a pick. But it's really funny. He made it sound like fingers.
Yeah, because it's the difference between the warmth of playing with your fingers versus like you said, the point of the I don't want to, that's not the right phrase to use it as saying it sounds more staccato when you're using a pick, but you get, there is definitely, I mean, the change in sound is so drastic. It always surprises me. And now I've always played with my fingers, but there are a few songs that I know I've tried to, in fact, it was a Tool song, which was, I don't think it was Schism, it was something else. And, Maynard plays with a pick for that. And I had to pick it up, understand what he was doing, because I kept forcing myself to stick with what I do, which is play with my fingers. And I was missing those. And then I started hearing the up and down of the picking. And I'm like, that's what he's doing. Because I was trying to hit those notes at the same time, in the same rhythm, in the same speed, and everything like that, and it was just off, and I couldn't figure out why, and that was why.
Yeah, Schism's a great bass track. It's groundbreaking what he's playing, and he's tuned down. He's tuned down as well.
It was in drop D there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wonderful track. Great track.
Yeah, it's a great song. And I love playing. A lot of the stuff we do is all in drop D, and the lower the better for me. It kind of, for me, it opens it up, because now I have not just I have a wider range as far as keys go, right? Because when you're in that drop tuning, you get a little bit more room to play up and further and play in the middle of that space between a standard tuning.
So you talk about drop tuning. So I take it you don't play 5-string.
No, I was going to bring that up next, and I was going to ask you to share on that and express more about that.
Okay, so for the longest time I would tune down, and then they have this thing that was invented called an octave divider. So it worked great. I mean, you heard Pino Palladino using octave dividers in the 80s. So that song "Call Me" by Go West. You hear Pino using an octave divider in that, and you also, I think Jacko might have used one, or he would record two bass lines, one high and one low. But anyway, so for the longest time I would tune down if I wanted to low D and stuff, or I would use an octave divider. And then I finally took my shot, and I bought my first 5-string in 1988, which I still have. It's a Music Man Stingray 5.
Nice.
And I've since acquired several other ones. I've got a Sadowski. I've got a Carruthers 5-string fretless.
Wow.
And not too long ago, I bought a Sire, a Marcus Miller V7. It's a wonderful bass.
Yeah.
Wonderful bass. But when I was doing more of the R&B blues kind of gigs, if you brought a 5-string onto the gig, they kind of give you a funny look, like, what's that? Because there is a difference in the way they sound and the way they relate to the music. I'm seeing more 5-strings as we go along in the millennium. Okay, it's hard to say. I mean, there's nothing like an old precision bass.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and I've got two of them. I've got a maple and I've got a rosewood.
Oh,
and it's the same thing. And it's the same thing with jazz basses. I've got a maple and a rosewood.
See, there you go. I've got a Schecter, and that's neck through. And let me tell you, that baby makes me sound like I know what I'm doing, but it weighs a ton. And then
Schecter makes fine instruments. Great guys, great people over there.
It's
Hey, what happened to your?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a Yamaha fretless that I love, but I've got to put active pickups on that bad boy, so it can do what it needs to do. But yeah,
Yamaha makes great stuff. Love their stuff.
Yeah, that thing was my go-to for a long time until I got the Schecter, and then I was like, oh my god, listen,
right?
Oh my gosh. I sound like I know what I'm doing.
You found your mode of expression.
You're right.
That's
You're
great.
right. Absolutely. And Toby had a question here. She wanted to know if you played the big ass bass.
Do you play?
I do play upright.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. You do play as double standard bass. Okay.
Do you
play
play
double
electric
bass.
or
bass,
do you
yes,
play
I do.
both? Do you have an electric bass or do you just play a big upright?
I have both.
Very nice.
I
Tell us
have
about
both.
your electric bass for a minute. I'm just curious. We got about 4 minutes. I'm curious.
My electric bass. Oh, so I was just saying to Jules that I've got 2 precisions, a maple and a rosewood. The rosewood is a 1961 precision that I bought for $50. That I bought for $50. Okay, and then I've got a 57 reissue, which I love, and then I've got a jazz bass, 2 jazz basses. One's rosewood and the other one is maple. I've got a Sadowski 5-string, the New York City vintage one. I've got a Carruthers 5-string fretless. I've got a Music Man that's really cool that I bought in 1988, and then I just bought a Sire V7, the Marcus Miller, and that's really cool. That's really cool because it's so cost effective. I can take it on the road, and if something happens, I can replace it easily.
That is very
and it sounds and I got to tell you, it sounds as good as any bass 4 or 5 times its price, which is really scary.
Yeah,
that is. It's amazing to me the technology that's out there. You were talking about the Fender Precisions and the jazz basses. I grew up with hearing those all the time. And then you remember the grabber, the big bass?
Oh, those are great. Those are great. Those are great. Those are great.
I always wondered, everybody I knew, like you mentioned Rick Danko, the guys who played that, there weren't that many, but it seemed to be a pretty damn good product from what I can tell.
I picked up fretless bass because of Rick Danko.
Wow.
No kidding.
Okay, yeah, because if you listen to Stage Fright, there's fretless all over that record.
Oh, yeah.
But what was really funny is when I bought my fretless, about 3 weeks later, Jacko comes out, right? So even though I was probably glomming onto the wrong guy, and I say that in parentheses,
I get it.
But Jacko comes out, and I'm just sitting there going, "Oh my God,
yeah,
this guy." But again, Jack Bruce was an upright player.
Really? Yeah.
Okay, Stanley Clark was an upright player.
And their intonation is always so incredible on a fretted, just having that mind to be able to know how to fret correctly is impressive to me as a drummer.
Well, the positional aspect of it, knowing the positions that they can utilize on it to get the most out of it. I love Stanley on upright. He sounds like he sounds like Ray Brown on steroids.
Yes, he does. Stanley's always blown me away since I had that whole fusion period of my life in the 70s, and Al Di Meola, all of the not techno jazz. It was just such the 70s. There was Chick Corea. There was so many great Weather Report. There was
Weather Report and Mahavishnu Orchestra, and Larry Coryell's band, Herbie Hancock. They had Hunter's band.
Chick Corea, Al Di Meola, Returns Forever.
Brand X.
Right, Brand X was killer. Yeah.
What was really funny is bands like Weather Report and some of those other bands were listening to bands like Genesis and Gentle Giant.
Exactly. Those were some great times. And guys, it's 5 o'clock. Lou, you've been great fun, man. We'd love to have you back. We could talk anytime about music, and you're great fun, man. Thank you for being on our show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and best to all your listeners. Happy holidays, and let's make this world a better place.
Amen,
absolutely.
Mother. Happy
holidays. And for our friends celebrating Hanukkah tonight, happy Hanukkah. And
awesome, I love it.
Yeah, man. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and if you're celebrating, have a good time with family and friends. We love everybody. It's Live with Neve. We'll see you next week We got some great folks. Thank you. Lou Castro again, live with Neve.
Thank you, Jules.
Everybody.
Thank you, Neil.
Lou.
Take care.
It was too much fun.
Bye-bye.
All right. We'll see ya.
Hey guys, I'm international singer-songwriter Hira, and I'm on Live with Neve. See you guys soon.
Hi, I'm trumpeter Greg Adams, and I'm live with Neve.